greatest threat to Black America is white supremacy.
There is a shooting culture in the police, and they get away with it.
Again, we are marching, we're fighting, we're burning down, but we did that. We did that. No one has been able to answer to me what do we get from doing that differently than what our brother and sister did in the 60s and 70s.
Somebody got to make the tools, somebody has to sharpen them, and then somebody has to cut down the tree. So I look at every part being played, it's necessary.
There's no way you can try to feed me spiritually on a subject that has nothing to do with my pain right now.
Commitment's a big part of this whole thing. If there's no commitment, if you let it go tomorrow or 3 months from now, you haven't done anything. You lose ground.
Love can conquer a multitude of things if we learn how to apply it in the place that it needs to.
That our job is so tough, come and look at how tough our job is. The toughest job in America is being a Black man.
Black Men Talk, Christianity and Black Lives Matter.
And the reason why our churches aren't growing, the reason why we are not having the impact from a Christian perspective as we should on this world, why Christianity is declining, is not because they want to take our airways, not because there's gay marriage, it's because Christians are not living up to the title of Christians.
How could the church not be in support of what Black Lives Matter is about?
I don't believe in, the African, spirituality about us, praying to these particular incarnated gods, and how I look at that stuff, I don't have nothing to do with.
These are tropes that are rooted in white supremacy.
We're not taught to shoot to kill. That's somebody. I don't like that narrative getting out because that's not what it is.
There are so many scriptures that command us to stand up for the oppressed, and we don't. Where is the Black church in this moment?
Welcome to part 2, Christianity and Black Lives Matter, #Black Men Talk. We appreciate you guys coming back. We know that this is some great stuff, some great information, so we really appreciate you. I ask that you share, that you comment, that you chime into the conversation. We will be speaking from a Christian standpoint. So please give your feedback. We would love to hear your thoughts on the matter. Without further ado, let's get started.
If you are white and you working in a Black community and you are racist, you need to be ashamed of yourself. You stood up there and took an oath. If this is not where you want to work at, then you need to take your behind somewhere else. How dare you stand next to me in the same uniform and murder somebody? How dare you? You ought to be ashamed of yourself. So why don't we just keep it real? If you're that officer that know good and well you got a God complex, you're afraid of people that don't look like you, you have no business in that uniform. Take it off. Because there's many of us that will give our life for anybody. And we took this oath and we meant it.
How many times, or what is the protocol before you actually shoot to kill someone? There is an initiative going on, and it's called 8 Can't Wait, where there are different steps to help police officers, or to help us survive an encounter with the police officer. And it's 8 different steps that an officer must do before shooting to kill. So it is police.
LaCora.
Yeah.
You keep saying shooting to kill. Officers are not shooting to kill.
No, Darin. No. Some
They
are.
are,
Some are.
They are.
Some are.
When you say it like that, it kind of blankets it and says that officers in general are trained to shoot to kill. They're not trained to shoot to kill.
Darin,
that's
down
not the
in
case.
Miami.
Some people are murderers. George Floyd's murderer was a murderer. That person had it in his mind, not because he was an officer. Maybe being an officer gave him a certain power and authority to get him in that position, but that person's a murderer.
But Darin,
all police officers are murderers.
I thank you for the clarity that you gave, Darin, in that particular regard. But here's the thing that's very interesting. That phrase, that shoot to kill, it seems like it's being embraced when it comes to us. Whether that's the agenda, that you all are not taught or not? There's no refrain from it. So if there's no refrain, then there's an embracing somewhere. So, and you said something very interesting. You said we're not taught shoot to kill, but we're taught shoot to stop. If a person jumps off of a building, the fall doesn't kill them, the stop does. So now I have to consider what am I actually saying? I can classically put it in any term that I want to, but when I look at it at the end of the day, and thank God for you, I hear your heart. I have a gift of discernment. So I can see your mentality in what you're giving us. But at the end of the day, you have to consider those that have received the training. And I like what LaCora said, I believe they should be 25 years and older. A gun in a 22-year-old's hand, who's probably been fed racism all his life, when he gets the opportunity to shoot a target that looks like me, I'm going to shoot to kill. I'm not going to shoot to stop. I'm not going to shoot to do what I've been trained to do. I'm going to shoot to kill, because now I have the license, I have the blue, I have the badge behind what my agenda can be carried out to be. I might not have on a white mask, but I do have on a blue suit, and that's going to protect me to kill another. And I'm sorry for the term, but that's the way that they think about it. I'm going to pick a today because this is what I've probably been taught, but I don't have to carry it out.
Well, the thing about that is that's the person, that's the individual. We need to do a better job. No, we need to do it better.
No, I'm sorry. Can I come in? Darin, I really appreciate what you're trying to do, but what you're really doing is defending a system that is shooting and killing us. And for you to say is shoot to stop, that might not be your intention. Impact is greater than intention. Right now, what we are discerning, you gotta read the room. What we are discerning as we bury our cousins and our uncles and our aunts and everything else that have been experienced, a person that is not as well killed, even killed as you are, is protecting a system and saying the system is not as bad as we think it is. That's what I'm personally hearing. I can't speak for anybody else, but you cannot. As soon as I give me a moment, because I've listened and I've been stewing and waiting for an opportunity to get a word in. Whether you accept shoot to kill as valid or not does not matter. That is the narrative that we experience. That is our lived experience, and you cannot tell us what our lived experience is when it comes to shoot first, ask questions later. I got qualified immunity and I'm gonna get away with it because the DA's dating my sister. That is the root of the problem. When the other issue that I got to talk about is you are going to do as a police officer what you're trained to do the most. And when it comes to de-escalation, when it comes to working with systems, talking things out, doing that, you are trained 85%, I think, more shooting than de-escalation and trying to find other things. We need you to stop shooting to stop. And we need you to use the power of your mouth, the power of your words to de-escalate a situation before it gets to that point where you have to say it's either me or them. In our area, they're spending $20 million. We're getting $20 million to do a new shooting range in my county for one of the schools. Imagine if they used $20 million to put in de-escalation techniques, and how much safer that would be for brown brothers and sisters that always end up being the ones that are shot or misinterpreted or anything else like that. There is a shooting culture in the police, and they get away with it. That's why they can shoot to stop or kill or whatever you want to say. But it sounds to me, and I can't speak to Ben or anybody else, it sounds like you're saying it's not that bad, and we got to make sure we don't. And that was the other last part of it. And I promise I'll wrap it up. The shoot or ride around thing. I need white police officers to ride around in a black neighborhood with me between the hours of 12 midnight and 3 and see what I see. Their lives are on the line. Our lives are on the line for scratching our butt or pulling out a registration from a glove compartment like Philando Castile. So that ride along to see our viewpoint, that is gaslighting to me. I don't care about y'all viewpoint because y'all don't care about our viewpoint. So we got to find a happy medium, and not saying that our job is so tough. Come and look at how tough our job is. The toughest job in America is being a Black man or a Black woman.
1 minute, and then we're going to move on to Ben. Brother Ben, I want to talk to you about a very viral video clip about looting and about our own communities. Darin Christopher, 1 minute, please, to respond.
I'm not in any way am I trying to defend any unjustified shootings, period. But I think everybody on this panel knows that there are situations where you, as a police officer, you have to use a gun. And if somebody is pointing a gun at you, or you're in a gun battle, trying to negotiate with them probably is not going to work. Now, if you're just talking about somebody getting angry and you're trying to de-escalate instead of pulling your gun out before we even get to the point of guns being necessary, I understand that. That's 100%. That's the way I do business. And that's the way I believe that cops should do business. But if you're in a gun battle, if you're in a situation, every situation, just because somebody gets shot and killed, doesn't mean that the police officer did the wrong action. It means that there's a possibility that if there's a gun play, if somebody has a gun, I'm not going to wait to see if they're going to shoot me. And I don't think you guys would either. That's what I'm talking about as far as being exposed to that aspect of it. But as far as disproportion of Blacks being shot, yes, due to fear, these people, I believe that a lot of the white officers, they automatically fear Black people, either because they don't understand them or they're intimidated by them. So they will overreact. And that's where you get some of the situations where Black people are shot for combing their hair or getting a license. You know, if your training is not good enough, if you're not trained well enough, or you're too afraid of that job, you shouldn't be in that job.
And Darin, we know, like Brother Ryan said, I know that you're a good person, and I know you have done due diligence to de-escalate and to do your job. But as we've all seen with these recent murders of unarmed Black men, and this is why I wanted to speak to Black men, because there is an innate fear that I see when it comes to non-Black people. Black men are powerful. Black men, to me, are just the one. This is something that God has molded and said, this is man. This is how I feel. So when we talk about police officers and we talk about the Black man, and when we talk about what is happening, it kind of lends us over to the next topic of the looting. There's a very viral video, Brother Ben and panel. I want you all to take a look at this, and let's talk about the thoughts, because I'm a Christian woman, but I'm a little different. And everyone does not agree with how I believe and how I see things. But let's take a look at this video, and we're going to talk about it.
How can you win? How can you win? You can't win. The game is fixed. So when they say, why do you burn down the community? Why do you burn down your own neighborhood? It's not ours. We don't own anything. We don't own anything. Trevor Noah said it so beautifully last night. There's a social contract that we all have, that if you steal or if I steal, then the person who is the authority comes in and they fix the situation. But the person who fixes the situation is killing us. So the social contract is broken. And if the social contract is broken, why the do I give a about burning the Hall of Fame, about burning the Target? You broke the contract when you killed us in the streets and didn't give a You broke the contract when for 400 years we played your game and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own by our bootstraps in Tulsa, and you dropped bombs on us. When we built it in Rosewood and you came in and you slaughtered us. You broke the contract, so the Target. Hall of Fame. As far as I'm concerned, they could burn this to the ground. And it still wouldn't be enough. And they are lucky that what Black people are looking for is equality and not revenge.
Okay. Every time I see that, and the entire video is about 6 minutes, 7 minutes long. But every time I see that, it moves me. It does something to me. As a Black woman, as a Black Christian woman, again, y'all may not like it, but I concur. without the profanity, but I concur. Brother Ben, I know you spoke on the topic. What are your thoughts when you first saw this video? What feelings went through you, and what are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you not agree?
She is absolutely speaking truth to power. Name one major revolution where the people who were oppressed finally got their freedom. Name it where it happened peacefully. Name it. My mentor, who's an older white guy, said, Benjamin, nobody's ever gotten their freedom playing nice. And so we recently had a number of companies, major corporations, and another mentor of mine brought this to my attention, who sits at the highest level of corporate offices in this country, said businesses, money, people did not start paying attention until the police station burned down in Minneapolis. You were marching, they paid you no attention. Even you were rioting, they were paying no attention. When that police station burned down, it got people's attention. No justice, no peace. And when people see that their livelihood, right, when there's anarchy and mayhem, they start to then pay you some attention. And so I don't know where this revolution is going, but I know the people are fed up. And it's so funny how narrative plays here in this as well, because when white people riot and tear down after a game and destroy neighborhoods, you don't have the police out there gassing them up. You don't have the police out there. You just have the media. Oh, they're just letting off a little steam, or they're just playing around. They burnt down the whole neighborhood and flipped the news van over, and this is fun. But when Black people do it, it's anarchy. It's demons. It's bad. It's anti-Christian, anti-peace. What about when Jesus was flipping tables and cussing people out? It's time out for us begging the oppressor for permission to revolutionize and revolt, rather. We've got to do it our way, in a way that gets us the results that we are looking for. And right now, under the current system, people talk about, well, if you dismantle the system, what are you going to do? You're going to build it back up equitably and build it back up in a way that we're all treated fairly. The way the police system is, the judicial system, the government, economics, all of that is against marginalized and Black and brown people. And we're never going to get there playing nice.
I like to, if I can come in for 1 second. She kept saying a social contract. There was never a social contract given to Black people and Black Americans. If there was a social contract, is that we will give you, you are here to serve and please us. You are here to work at our whim. We brought you to this country to do whatever you want, whatever we want you to do. That was the social contract. She's talking about being broken. We're breaking that contract. If you want to look at it, we're breaking that. We're saying no more. We're saying you are not going to keep doing what you want to us, beating us up, shooting us, blaming us, looking for dirt on us after you kill us. That contract that they have for us to be second class, third class, if any class citizens, we're tearing that social contract up. We're saying no more. And like you said earlier, there has been no revolution ever in this country that has happened without bloodshed. There has been no the Boston Tea Party. When you want to go there, the Boston Tea Party was destruction and looting. And those white men that did that, actually, I don't know if you guys know this, they put on brown face and they put on some Native American costumes to blame the Native Americans that were in the area for that action. They were cowards. The same thing happened with the Civil War when it came to freedom for African Americans that we enjoy now. When it came down to women's right, women being able to vote 100 years ago, white women, I'll say it right, white women being allowed to vote. There were white women getting beat up left and right across this country before that happened. Civil Rights Act. A week before the Civil Rights Act was signed, there was bloodshed in my native, my hometown, St. Augustine, Florida, led by Brother Young. Brother Young did that, led that march. So it is the bloodshed from Selma that got things done. There has always been no peaceful revolutions. We're not calling for violence, but we're saying the violence, the Bible hated. All these preachers say the violence take it by force, right? That's what's going on right now. And those white Christians to say, just get along to get along because I enjoy the system benefits me, don't disrupt the system. I'm not racist myself, so why there's no racism. That kind of enough gaslighting, we've had enough of it. And that's the heart of the matter, what she was saying. That's what I get out of that. So thank you for sharing that video.
And I would say that that's what a lot of our white pastors, our white evangelicals have been speaking on their pulpit about the effect, not the cause. They've been speaking of the rioting, the looting. They dislike it, they hate it. They make it seem as if these people are trash and that they are doing it without reason. There was a pastor out of Ohio, and I'm going to read his statement. Let me share my screen here. But actually, I don't need to share my screen. I'm just going to read it. He talked about, just like Dave Ramsey, and I really like Dave Ramsey, but Dave Ramsey made it a point to speak on the effect. Didn't speak too much on George Floyd, didn't even pronounce his name correctly or spell it correctly, but he was so focused on the effect of what was happening and not the cause. And I tried to search for pastors to see if they were speaking on KKK or any white militia groups in the pulpit. They have not, but they are quickly to discuss Black Lives Matter. So I'm gonna read you guys what this pastor said. Don't give me your crocodile tears and your phony outrage when some small time crook and some gangbanger is killed while arrested. This is Mike Malazango. All right. He said this in a recent sermon over the pulpit. He went on to say, Black people have aborted over 300,000 babies. And now you want to talk about the outcry of this man being killed. Where's your outcry for these abortions? So this is what he said over a pulpit sermon. But I truly felt that he was using religion in the Bible, in the church, to hide behind his hate.
Well, let me there's a couple of things that, and when I watched the video that you played of that sister, right, I felt her passion. I could understand the frustration is what I gathered that I can obviously identify with. Where I am now in life, and that's, again, I may be a little bit different than some of the other thoughts out there, but I don't live to look for white vindication. I don't live for the appeal to white folks on changing my situation or my life. I don't. And so my concern, again, and it may differ, Martin Luther King said that, and we all know this phrase, that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressed. They must be demanded by the oppressor, right? So I'm a Malcolm X kind of guy. But then as I'm getting older, I'm looking at the benefits of both, that you did need both mindsets to be able to get things accomplished. As I hear some of the other panelists, and again, it's not one way. But when you look at the riots in 1968, where Washington, D.C. was burned down, right? Chicago was burned down. When you look at the Watts riots in 65, because of atrocity, because of a Black man being pulled out of his car, they thought he was being mistreated. So you had that burning for several days, and 34 to 40 people died. My response to that is, we've always had riots and upheaval and demands for justice. Yet when it happened in 54 or happened in 65 or happened in 68 or happened with all these things, or happened in the 70s in Rochester, New York, or happened in all these places to this time, here we are now in 2020 still having the discussion. So my approach is simply this: tearing down a facility or tearing down a mall location in your own neighborhood, I get what the passion is. But again, that happened 40 years ago, it happened 35 years ago, it happened 20 years ago, yet we're still having this discussion. My approach is simply this, right? That is, we can talk about destroying those things, But where is the accountability? Now, let me clarify what I'm saying. I'm not talking about the personal accountability that ultra conservative people will talk about, that Black people need to take care of their families and Black fathers need to do this. I'm not getting into that part, although we need those things, right? But where's the accountability in terms of we burn those things down, but how many of us actually put our dollars towards things that truly change our communities? How many of us go to a Black business? No, I'm saying some of us may, but how many of us go to a Black business and because they ran out of ketchup or napkins or something we don't have, then we change our minds that we don't want to go back. They don't have the right hair that I want, and so I'm never going to go back. So I'm going to go back to the other store down the street. So those are things that help to really change our community. Otherwise, my concern is we go back to what we did again, the riots in 65, the riots in 68, the riots in the 70s. And now we're 20, 30 years later, still having the same discussion, where the number one thing that can affect our lives, again, it's not one answer. But one of the primary things that we haven't done is even pour into our own. What we have to even address is this systemic stuff even affects how we treat each other. So it's not just cops looking bad at Black people. It's been ingrained in our minds that we start to look at Black people in that way. We clutch our purses and our wallets when we walk down the street and we see a couple of Black brothers walking down the block. Because it affects some of us too, whether we want to admit it or not, right? So it's deeply entrenched. So when we talk about these systemic issues, it's not one plan. And I'm never gonna dog out a brother or sister for coming up with a method of destroying a city block and all that. My response is, okay, we destroyed it. The response is not for me to then look for the oppressors to then swoop in because we burn down their building to then somehow rebuild it up that will benefit us. Why? It hasn't happened in 40 years, in 50 years, in 80 years. It's never happened. They burned down Woolworths, they burned down Target today, they burned down Walmart. We're still here having the same discussion. Let's address this and do a more systemic plan of our own rather than seeking them to come and solve our problem.
But Brad, if we are not in a position of power, because you said for them to come in and swoop in and be the knight in shining armor, they're going to solve our problems. But if we are not in positions of power, how can that happen?
Okay, so let me answer. And I know everyone has a different thing. And again, it's not one answer.
Right.
Part of the impression or part of the results that happen why white property is protected, why white neighborhoods are protected, are the taxes that are paid, or the influence that's made by the dollars. We worship not God in this country. Let's cut the bull. Our deity is capitalism. Our deity is money. Our deity is wealth. Why? Because we will sell out morals for access to wealth. We see it happening currently, which is how we started our discussion about why white evangelicals will make a certain vote. So our deity is capitalism. So how do we make influence? Part of that way is, what are we doing in terms of that effect? Is it that we control? Right? What votes do we control? What business, what industries do we control? Are we able to send our sons and daughters to work for our organizations and our companies rather than putting them at the whim of others to go work for other companies that they get fired, they get racism, they get bias, they get all these things? What are we doing to pour into our own with the millions of dollars, the trillions of dollars that we spend yearly, but yet spend only a small portion to give back? It's about power, it's about access, it's about control, it's about ownership. Otherwise, again, we are marching, we're fighting, we're burning down, but we did that. We did that. No one has been able to answer to me, what do we get from doing that differently than what our brother and sister did in the 60s and 70s?
Well, I think for that to answer Brother Ben, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So while we are still having the same conversation, small progress has been made at either every one of these things or every so often after a riot, a burning, there's changes in policy because we are not just one nation, but there are municipalities, there's state, and even corporate. Things are changing. People invest in stuff, giving people opportunities. So we've made change. We're not where we were in the 60s, the 50s, or the 70s, though we're having the same style of conversation. It is all based in narrative, right? It's a both and. while we need to, because I said it on an interview and people didn't get it and I had to break it down another way, that we have the power to take care of our own selves. We have the power to build our community. We have the power to build our own schools. We have the power to invest in our own businesses. We spend trillions of dollars a year. That's why billions of dollars in market ads are towards Black people, because we spend the most. We don't have a great relationship with money. So much work needs to be done in that regard. But on the flip side of it, just like the young lady said in her video, when we do build up, you take away. When we do start doing our own, you disrupt, because there is a hatred towards Black skin where people do not want to see us progress. Robert Smith paid off everybody's debt at Morehouse during his ceremony. Immediately, his companies became under investigation for no bad doing. And so while we try to build our own, they will always try to come and take it. So it's a both and. We have to work internally and we have to work externally. And to the quote that you just read, we have to stop being surprised, LaCora, because Christianity was birthed in this nation on white supremacy. When the Pilgrims came over, oh, look at these savages, they need Jesus Christ. When the slaves, oh, look at these savages, they need Jesus Christ. And as a minister, it first hit me when I watched Rebirth of a Nation with Nate Parker. And I said, oh, wow. It hit me like a ton of bricks. And that began to change my mindset. And so, you know, while you'll be in the church, whether white or Black, and you'll hear about Black Lives Matter, but you don't hear anything about these militia and white supremacists who plan to kidnap and torture a sitting governor. It is absolutely quiet. They are the greatest threat to America. They are the domestic terrorists, but you don't hear about them because of narrative. And Brother Darin, you talked about, you know, white cops fearing Black people. It's not that they fear us. They hate us. They don't like us. They stigmatize us. Because I've seen cops handle a bear. I've seen cops handle a tiger. I've seen cops handle a white person with a gun. So it's not based in fear. It's based in narrative and what they believe about us. There was a survey done, and they had people, you know, look at how we value things. Dogs rated higher than Black people. People value dogs greater than they value Black people. And so when you don't value something, you disregard it, you don't respect its life. And that is why Black Lives Matter, because it's not being valued.
That was good. Thank you, Brother Ben. Go ahead, Ryan.
Brad said something that was very key. And I'm looking at this from a Christian standpoint, a person of God.
Yes.
You know, I remember a story that I heard years ago. We know growing up in the Black household, we got whooped with switches, extension cords, house shoes, whatever there might be. You know, it's gonna whoop your behind. You got out of line. And I grew up, even though I'm young, I grew up in a time that everybody got you. If you showed out or was cutting up, auntie got you, uncle got you, mama got you, daddy got you. The person that was across the street, Miss Robbins got you. However, they had the mentality it takes a village to raise a child. But my point is that there was a woman who kept whooping her son because she said he's hard-headed, he's doing what he want to do, he won't listen. She whooped him and she whooped him and whooped him, and his behavior never changed. She whooped him, she whooped him, she whooped him, his behavior never changed. Finally, she got tired of pruning her trees. She got tired of using her fly swatters. She got tired of using her broomstick. Whatever she figured, this ain't working. One of her friends told her, why don't you go have his hearing checked? Because he might not be able to hear you the way that you think he can. When he went to the doctors, 83% of his hearing was gone. And he was born like that, and they never investigated to find out why. So she was literally torturing and whooping this child that she thought was being disobedient, and all he had was a hearing problem. My point is to what Brad was saying. We have to come up with ways where we become more skillful, more technologically sound, to know how to get into the system to become a voice where there's no platform for my voice. Now, I'm the first to say I'm an artist. Even though I teach, you know, I paint, do oil paintings, all that. It's a gift. But before I start, I always look at that canvas, and sometimes I'll look at it for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, sometimes it can go for days before I put anything on the canvas, because I'm surmising in my mind what I'm going to bring forth to have a masterpiece. I'm not just going to put a piece together, but I want to make sure it's a masterpiece. So I go through everything I can think of. Is it enough inches on this frame? Is it enough? Do I have enough paint? Do it? Whatever. I think if we really start to consider what has worked, what has not worked. When I paint a room, like my walls, you know what takes me most of my time? Preparation. 95% preparation, 5% execution. I'm taping off stuff, have a plastic on the floor. Most of my time spent painting is the preparation. 5% execution. LaCora, I know you militant. You go for it. However, I don't knock you for that, because somebody got to make the tools, somebody has to sharpen them, and then somebody has to cut down the tree. So I look at every part being played is necessary. It's necessary. The Bible says in Judges 21 and 25, the people had no king, so they did that which was right in their own eyes. Saul was the very first king ever introduced. The people wanted to be like every other nation. It became a monarchy, which means governed by man instead of a theocracy governed by God. I didn't come to do a Bible lesson today, but I'm only giving the foundation from where my standpoint is. So I believe when we go back to the fundamentals of why we live, move, and have our being and have breath in our bodies, and we join together through our faith to say, you know what, we're all on the same team. We're all for the common cause. Some of you going to fight. Some of you going to be on the right field, left field, center field. Some of you going to be shortstop, first base, second base, third base. Some of you going to be the pitcher. Some of you going to be the catcher. Some of you going to be the umpire. However, we're on the same team. We're sitting on this screen today, and we all, kind of like for the same cause. But through my discernment and things that I hold, after we get off this call, we'll still say they thought they knew. They know what they was talking about. They just trying to tear us down, or they think they know. Instead of saying, you know what? Even though, and I'm saying this in the light of viewers and how people think, even though you might have had an opposing view, I can agree to disagree with you. It doesn't mean I'm against you. Even though you might not see the way I see it, it doesn't mean I hate you. You just see it differently. Even though you're brown like me, and even though we might have different variations, we just have a different view. I think once we come back to God first, and I'm not talking about being God we trust on the money, because he's always been green to them. That's their God. You got the right amount of money, you can come everywhere, anywhere you want to. Money answers all things according to scripture. But when we go back to the CEO of the universe, God, who created us, and we begin to embrace his plan, he said, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. As much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Sunday school lesson this morning was, we even got to love our enemies if we're going to go to heaven. That's a hard pill to swallow. But love can conquer a multitude of things if we learn how to apply it in the place that it needs to. I'm done.
Well, firstly, the prophet Jeremiah said, help those who have been robbed, rescue them from their oppressors. There are so many scriptures that command us to stand up for the oppressed. And we don't. And I know that there's some black troopers out there. I ride with them, the pastors. But where is the black church in this moment? I listen to their sermons. I go on the internet and I go from sermon to sermon to sermon, and I hear nothing. And when the government was investigating those millionaire pastors, the church was stay away from my money, separation of church and state. You heard from all the churches. But black people are being slain in the street. The church was the foundation of the civil rights movement. Not today. Where are the black voices? Where are the black churches? The churches were saying something when quarantine was happening. People couldn't come in and couldn't get that money.
Yes, they were. And some of them end up in a casket. But I would say Tony Evans, he has been very vocal.
Yep, I like Tony Evans.
That's just one. And Kirk Franklin, he's not a pastor, but he is a huge celebrity with a huge platform, and he's been very vocal.
That's the question I hear going forth. Where are the celebrity pastors who are not saying anything? That's the way you have to approach it, because there are pastors who are fighting and speaking out. They're just not famous enough to be viewed in it for TV. So you might not see the man standing down there on the corner with signs up, no justice, no peace. He's not famous enough. But if somebody does that in the limelight, he gets the acclaim for it because we know who he is. You can call Tony Evans' name and 1 million people might know. So we can't blanket it to say what churches are not doing. My pastor is one. I'm one of those. We're out there. I just met with not so long ago, the mayor of our city. Hey, we're going to do something in our community. I'm not even trying to go to the White House and government. That's too many process. Let's get something done in our community first. Let's see what we can do for our people. See how we're going to do it. So we're doing it.
More. We need more, because on the flip side, you see all the white pastors standing up for Donald Trump. You see them at the White House, whether they're known or unknown.
Celebrity ones.
I'm saying we need more. While there are out there, I'm one of them. I'm friends with a lot, but we need many more. There's no way you can try to feed me spiritually on a subject that has nothing to do with my pain right now. Black people are being drastically affected by what is happening right now. And if you're not speaking to that pain, are you even in alignment in the spirit with what's happening in the world today?
Excuse me one second, brother man. I have been a member of this community in Southwest Florida for 18 years. The Black pastors are missing in action. The Black pastors are not on the street. The Black pastors, there's one, Velma Smith, Reverend Velma Smith. She's a Black woman. She is the only person who is consistently present for community action, things that are going on in the community. When we were talking about taking the bus down, taking all this propaganda stuff that's up here, there was no Black preachers ever there. Never. It is the NAACP, it's the community organizers and activists like myself. So when it comes down to it, yes, no matter how active you personally are, Reverend Bell, and your pastor in your church, the pastors are missing in action. Their voices are missing in action. And it's not about celebrities. Yes, it's some fools that Donald Trump will have in his office. One of them is from Orlando. He has a church that meets in this little restaurant with 8 people in it. But he's sitting at the table. I'm for real. They call him a bishop and everything else like that. He got 8 people, 6 of them are members of his family, and he's sitting in a restaurant that's closed on Sunday morning, but he's sitting at the table. So not all celebrities are celebrities, but the Black voice, the Black pastors, the Black men, from what I see on the streets. Now, what you see in California is different. I can't speak to that. But in where I'm at, they are not on the streets. They're not asking us what's going on. They're not offering their meeting, their buildings for us to meet and organize. They're not giving us financial support. They're not giving us water or ice or cooler. They are not involved at all. And they are in their cave, and that's all they care about.
I will echo that. I live in Los Angeles. It has not been as apparent that, Brother Ryan, what area do you live in? You're like in the valley.
I'm in the high desert Inland Empire area.
Oh, you're Inland Empire. Okay, so yeah.
100 pastors just met together and did a march with nothing but church people. We walked those streets, signs, had our Black Lives Matter t-shirts. I got my mask and t-shirt sitting in front of me. Oh, we were out there. And that's not the first time. Like, we literally joined our words together. We're in those mayor's ears. One of the mayors is Black. She's over in Carlton. We got in her ear. That lady came out there and she electrified the place. So there's things happening. So that the reason why I mentioned celebrity is because we weren't famous enough to be on the news. Oh, I wish we were. But had TD Jakes or somebody did that, they would have highlighted it. No, but again, because we don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening.
Hold on, Brother Ryan. TD Jakes is too busy taming the pew, just as well as so many other Black people.
I just happen to use his name because he's known.
No, trust me, like Brother Ben said, I have been researching. I've been seeing what they have been saying because I want them to be vocal about it, and they have not. And I love Brother TD Jakes. He's very, very nice. I've interviewed him many of times. Nice brother. However, he needs to be more purposeful with his platform in his voice, because what I'm hearing, and you said something earlier, Brother Ryan, about how we all have a role. Absolutely, we do all have a role. But what bothers me is when the Black Christian gets up on their high horse and they dare judge the people that are out on the streets protesting. When these Black pastors, mega pastors, celebrity pastors, whatever you want to call them, have been telling us that we just need to sit down and pray. Sit down and pray, church. That is not enough. And I understand, Brother Broad, because your whole position is economical growth. Now, I spoke with the brother on Juneteenth. I had a special series and we talked about economical growth. We talked about the Black church and the racial divide. We talked about trauma, racial trauma, and the mental health of Black people. So I understand that we all have a role, just like Brother Darin, you know, with Blue Lives Matter, the Black men in blue. It's a hard position. We all have a role. But the problem that I'm seeing is with the church, especially our white churches that are on this platform, spewing all this crazy stuff. They're spewing things like Black Lives Matter or terrorist groups. And then you know what happens, Brother Ryan? We as Black Christians, we take it. We eat it up. We share it. We pass it. So when you spoke about the strategy and the preparation, 95% preparation, 5% execution, y'all executed, y'all did a great job. Y'all had so many people out there. But maybe within that preparation, making sure that media outlets were out there. I could have been out there. I would have covered it. Maybe making sure that everybody was on their phone sharing so that we are aware of what's happening. Because, brother, I don't see it. Hence, we having this discussion right now. And I'm tired of it.
And Cora, that's the other thing. When you don't see it, all that energy is almost like for nothing. It energizes that group of people. But if it's not seen, if it's not broadcast, if it's not, the effect is not allowed to reach more people, then that effort almost dies because people get tired. People don't commit long enough to push things forward. It's great for a few weeks, a few months, but then it all dies down. Everything goes right back to normal. And that's where the problem is.
And LaCora, I gotta be honest.
For hope, the people are looking. So many Black Christians, so many Christians. Let's just call a spade a spade. A lot of us are sheep, and a lot of us do not study, and a lot of us do not have our own mind. Can I be clear? I'm going to be crystal clear. A lot of us are even stupid, all right? We will take anything that a pastor has said and we run with it, Brother Ryan, Brother Ben, Brother Broad, Brother Willie. This is what happens, Darin. So when I see this, I get upset. I feel like we need to have conversations. I want us to have a mind and understand that we all have a role. All that judgment, all of the foolishness. Stop taking everything that the pastor gives you and think that God has whispered in their ear, because God has not whispered to all of these pastors. Some of these pastors are not even pastors. Do you hear?
But LaCora, I agree. But here's the thing. This is what I'm going to applaud you on. Had you not did this panel today, I probably would have never heard of none of these gentlemen that are sitting before me on this Zoom call.
Aren't they wonderful? They're wonderful.
Awesome. But here's my point. Every last one of us in here can say what we've done, but it wasn't publicized enough for me to know who you are. At the end of the day, it doesn't negate to say, well, they're not doing this and they're not doing that. What you've done is you've created this platform for a voice to be heard for people I would have never even mentioned or even known or even came about. So we can't always blanket it and say what every Christian is doing, what they're not doing, because I would have known none of these gentlemen today had you not did this panel, had you not did this particular format. So now what it does, it creates a climate that we can now, and I'm a gleaner, that now I can embrace to pull people from different regions to come up with a collective. It's almost like a paragraph. We're all different sentences to make a complete thought. So now I can take what you all are doing and what you've done today, and we can all individually build platforms for a voice. So now my question is, how do we make what we're talking about today appealing enough for a person to want to come in and dine with what we've been eating?
Well, actually, that's going to be our last question. I'm going to have Brother Broad, because I do want everyone to, what is the ask of the people, whether it be economical, whether it be police, whether it be reform, what is the ask of Christians specifically? So before we get to that last question, Brother Broad, go ahead and say what you have to say.
This is amazing, and Ryan just touched on it, is that we're not a monolithic group. What we always want to remember is that just like how our faces differ, they say that in churches, our needs differ, our approach will be different. Well, we always want to remember that what our end goal is. And our end goal is to make sure that Black bodies are not being thrown down in the streets, are not being hung from trees, are not being shot in the back. What we want is that our Black sisters are not sitting, sleeping in their beds and being killed and being murdered, right? So our end goal is that we want empowerment. We want to be able to have our children go and have access. We want to be able to have wealth. We're tired of having $13,000 in wealth, and white families are having $150,000 of wealth, right? So we're sick and tired of that. So we want the same thing. What is important is, and Ryan touched on that, is if we're doing this from a Christian perspective, it behooves all of us to make sure that we're pausing and we're taking time to dig into the Word of God. If we believe that the Bible is the guide, faith rule, the guide to our faith and practice, then it's for us to be able to make sure that we're studying to show ourselves approved as well. Our people perish because of lack of knowledge. So you're correct. It is not leaning to ministers to share information. And let's be clear, let's not romanticize the 60s. Everybody was not in support of MLK. But because we're a little bit younger, we're a little bit removed from the generation, we think everybody was in such great support. He was one of the most hated men in America. Right? Some things that we forget is that when MLK was doing this in the 50s and in the early 60s, there were 50-year-old and 60-year-old Black people that were born in 1900. Let that simmer in your spirit for a moment. So when MLK is doing this work in the 50s and 60s, there were 50 and 60-year-old Black people born in 1900. So many of their approach, their fathers and mothers had come out of slavery. So from their perspective, it was, why is this Negro, this little young Negro, rabble-rousing and causing all these problems? They were not all in support of MLK, just like America was not all in support of Muhammad Ali. We celebrate him now as the greatest ever, and I hear all these white people in such support, and I march with King. If every white person I hear every single day who marched with King, my goodness, everybody could not have marched with King. But we romanticize it now. So we can't look for Black ministers. Yes, they are missing in some areas. Yes, we need more of them involved. But yet, many of them are still very active. As Ryan just pointed out, many of these brothers on the panel I would not have known of. But they're doing work. The important part for us as Christians is to make sure that we are lighting up the corner where we are. And that means we are studying the Word of God. We are applying the Word of God clearly, and we're doing our work. See, truth without love is that's just law. That's just archaic. That's brutal. But watch this. Love without truth is just symbolism. It's just sentimentalism. So I love you, but I won't want to give you truth either. I don't want to chastise you for doing something wrong because I just want to give you love. No, truth and love goes together. And that needs to be applied as we're doing this Christian journey within Black Lives
Matter. Brother, that was so good, Brad. Everyone, before we go.
That's the offering plate.
What's that?
That's the offering plate.
I want to have you guys say a last word. The ask of Christians. Brad, you kind of narrowed it into truth and love being hand in hand. So I want you all to think about what can we do? What is the one thing above all? You know, we know the obvious, to love Jesus, to pray. So I don't want that answer, all right? But actively, what can people watching do as they move forward? Because I feel that we are at a tipping point. When I saw all the videos from around the world, knocking down statues, to the marches, the protests, I could not believe it. It felt like it was surreal. It seemed like a movie to me. So I feel like we are at a tipping point. I don't know what's to come, but as we move forward, as we go into the unknown, what are your words of advice for people as we move forward? We're going to start with Brother Willie.
All right, well, my people perish for lack of knowledge. All these brothers, all these preachers and elders dropping word left and right. Y'all can quote the scripture. We have to continue to grow in knowledge of the systems that are going And we have to take that knowledge and sit our butts down at these city council meetings, at these school board meetings, on these advisory boards, at these city, whatever school board meeting advisory. There's a lot of talk about having a seat at the table. You're at the table whether you want it or not. You want to have good representation of the table. You might be the server to the people at the table. You might be on the menu that they're going on, but you're at the table. But we want to make sure that you are informed and you are working to develop and to correct policy. The policies and the laws and the procedures that are taking place that hurt us, we're not represented there. It is on us, especially, I don't know if you believe in the talented 10th philosophy or not. It is on us that I think all of us are college educated. It is on us to take on the burden of being the strong bear the infirmities of the weak. There's another scripture for you guys, for you Christians. Those of us that are strong, we need to be running for office ourselves. We need to be supporting those of us that are running for office. Those, you ask for one thing, but we have to get more involved than mailing our ballot off or whatever we're going to do. We have to be involved in what's going on. And we can't be if we don't want to get involved. If we want to, well, I got other stuff to do. I got to raise my family. I got to do whatever. Like Dr. King didn't have kids. You follow what I'm saying? We have to do what we need to do for the culture. For us to get to really where we need to be. Together we're stronger. So thank you very much, Cora, and I enjoyed the conversation with you brothers.
I love the conversation. Thank you so much, Willie Earl. Darin, Mr. Black Man in Blue. I love Darin. What say you? What are some words of advice for the people as we move forward?
Well, I say some of the things that were said, a lot of the things that were said today by everybody gave a little bit of energy and knowledge back and forth throughout this whole entire conversation, which was very healthy, very intellectual. And I think a lot of things in my mind changed and did a little bit different, took a little bit different stance. And I learned some stuff. I learned about what people are doing in other parts of California that may not be done here. We don't see it here, but it's done out where he's at, where Ryan's at. And we don't know that until forums like this happen. So part of that would be staying informed of what people are doing everywhere, not just in your neighborhood, but all over. And then find out what your niche is in this whole situation. How can you help as an individual? Give your commitment to doing whatever your little part is. It might be public speaking. It might be setting up these forums. It might be just reaching the people in your community, in your church. Those things are important. We got to support each other in what we're doing. We talked about Black businesses and having our own thing and supporting each other. We have to remember that supportive mindset and try to adhere to that and commit to it. Commitment's a big part of this whole thing. If there's no commitment, if you let it go tomorrow or 3 months from now, you haven't done anything. You lose ground. So it's a matter of staying committed to what the cause is all about. And that's pretty much what I got to say. And it's a privilege to be on this board. And I appreciate all you brothers and Sister Cora for, having this. So.
Thank you, Darin. Brother Ben.
The greatest threat to Black America is white supremacy. And from the place I sit, working in government, working in local communities, being an organizer, you can always tell the pulse of an organization. And so while we may not be able to collectively see what every Black church is doing, you can tell the pulse of that movement. And so when the federal government came out with faith-based organizations under President George W. Bush, the Black churches were talking about it. You bring up an LGBTQ issue, marriage equality, the Black churches were talking about it. And another way you can always tell the pulse of something is if you follow the dollars. The church brings in billions and billions and billions of dollars. if this is the greatest threat to Black America and you have been charged by God to shepherd these people, follow the activity and follow the money. What has your money been doing to support Black lives in your community? I always wondered why there would be 10 churches on a block and the block looked like World War III. What are you really doing? So the thing, while we can support organizations, fundraise, donate, march, whatever, the first thing we all have to do is check ourselves, check our bias, check our knowledge source, check what we personally believe in what we are doing. Because this is the time to teach ourselves about what is real. We talked about earlier, he that worship must worship in spirit and in truth. The prophets of old always bucked against the social construct, especially when it came to idolizing things. And right now, the idol is the white standard. We are worshiping the white standard and disregarding who we are as a people. We knew God before slavery. We were connected to God. And most times you hear very, very limited thinking from people who haven't traveled all over the world and are just experiencing faith through their local church and had no connection to how people connect with God across the world. So whatever you thought about God, whatever you thought about church, challenge that. And whatever remains, if you're afraid to challenge it, then we have an issue. But whatever remains true will remain true. But we're now moving into an age where people are educating themselves outside of what the pulpit is saying and realizing, hey, wait a minute, we've been told some things that are not, this ain't it. And so this is the time to really draw a line in the sand and figure out which side you're going to stand on, because this is a detrimental moment in time for us as Black people.
Absolutely. Well said. And I will, Christians out there listening, may I submit for your consideration, when your children, when your nephews, when your family asks you, what did you do? 2020 was a rough year. You were there. What did you do? And you have nothing. You have nothing to say what you did. Shame on you. You know better, do better. You can't sit there with your Christian self and say that you did nothing but pray. Don't do that. Brother Brad, Brother Ryan, you two, I would like for you all to give your last words. Brother Ryan and then Brad.
Well, Sister Cora, thank you for the time and opportunity. I have been through some things in this life that I don't look like what I've been through. I lived in Europe for a time. I was afforded the opportunity to actually be one of the ministers in Finland, where we had to go to church underground because they didn't allow Christians to worship above ground. I've been to almost all 50 states ministering the word of God. And I'm young, but God has afforded me the privilege to be able to go into arenas where most people probably didn't have the chance because of favor. However, I will say this, I'm going to use your show as an acronym for what I'm going to say next, the YES, Y-E-S. I am going to purposely yield myself to knowledge and the understanding of where we are in the climate and season we stand in as a people, to empower and be empowered by the knowledge that will be afforded to me by whatever system is offered. And S, I will solidify those particular things which will give me a yes at the end of the day for not only my family, but for the generations to come. And I believe once we really humble ourselves and we begin to understand, it's not sometimes what we see, but it's the unseen that speaks louder. It's not what lies behind me, and it's not what lies ahead of me. It's what lies within me. And I believe it was Job that experienced so many trials and hardships. He said, I looked to my left and I looked to my right, but I found out my help comes from the inside. My particular angle and the things that I've been able to do and accomplish has come from God himself. He is the director. He is the teacher. He is the guidance to my life. The Bible says, trust in the Lord with your whole heart, not half heart, but with your whole heart. Lean not to your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. It's not singular, it's plural in the scripture, Paths. I've learned one thing. My mother always told me. She said, if you learn to take what people say, don't use it against them, but use it for yourself. You can learn from everybody. I'm not one of those people to ever cut a person off because you disagree with me. No, what you did, you allowed an area in me to have a capacity for growth because I might not have never saw your point of view or might not have saw your angle. It doesn't make me ignorant. It just makes me not enlightened to what the way you might have been thinking. However, again, I'm yielded, empowered, and solidified. That's my yes for today.
I love that, Ryan. You get extra points for that. I love that. You can tell you're an educator. I love it. I love it. Brother Broad, please close us out with your advice for the people. Are you frozen, Brother Broad? Oh, no. Okay, there you go. Okay.
Bring it home, Brett.
Yes, go
Well,
ahead.
I mean, beautiful. We've heard all of these benedictions, right? So from a Christian perspective, let me just share this, is I want us to always keep in mind that this is really not a battle against the person standing next to you, the person in the neighborhood. This is a bigger issue. And I think Brother Earl pointed out some things in some other chats, but this is a bigger issue. My encouragement for us as Christians is that we start with God first. We generally start with God first. And if we don't, then all this is a waste of time. Why go to church? Why pray? Why claim Christianity? Why do all that? Just do something else. But if we need to start with that as the source of our power, all of us on this panel right now, we're here not just because we're cute, not because we're the smoothest brothers in town, you know, of which I am, but not just because of those things, right? It is because of the power of God. It's because of the power of God and his favor in our lives. So I'll leave you with one thing. This is a beautiful quote from the book Education. And it says, the greatest want of the world is the want of men who will not be bought or sold, men who in their inmost souls are true and honest, men who do not fear to call sin by its right name, men whose conscience is as true to duty as the needle to the pole, men who will stand for the right though the heavens fall. It's from the book Education by a woman named E.G. White. So powerful message. And I want to encourage us as Christians who happen to be Black. And this is an admonition to those Christians who happen to be white, is that we need to make sure that we are true to God and not true to political ideology, not true to our bias, not true to our own self-interest. Because at the end of the day, what we're preaching, only what we do for Christ will last. And the reason why our churches aren't growing, the reason why we are not having the impact from a Christian perspective as we should on this world, why Christianity is declining, is not because they want to take our airways, it's not because there's gay marriage, it's because Christians are not living up to the title of Christians. It's because we're not little Christ. And so because we're not living up to being little Christ, others are seeing the inconsistencies. Others are seeing the lack of authenticity in our approach. So I just want to encourage us, my parting word is just make sure that we are staying true to God, and he will direct our path and make sure that we are, anything we do, whether it's protest, whether it's to march, whether it's economic empowerment, if we do it without the guidance of God, it will absolutely fail all the time, 100% of the time. So I want to encourage all of us here to just push forward.
Amen.
Good, brother. What I
Let
heard.
the church say amen. Let the church say amen.
I don't know that version, Willie.
Time to go.
Listen,
Time to
to
go.
me, Brad, it sounds like you said make Christianity right again. That's what it sounds like. I don't know. Maybe I but listen, I want to end off. There is a video clip of James Baldwin. We all know James Baldwin, right? Very highly intelligent brother. My God. There's a clip, and as Brother Brad said, you know, we are Christians that happen to be Black. You are Christians that happen to be non-Black. James Baldwin talked to us years ago, decades ago, and we're still asking the same question. So check it out. And you guys, God bless you. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you at the next one.
What is it you wanted me to reconcile myself to? I was born here almost 60 years ago. I'm not going to live another 60 years. You always told me it takes time. It has taken my father's time, my mother's time, my uncle's time, my brother's and my sister's time, my nieces and my nephew's time. How much time do you want for your progress?